Hi, this is Marisa Sanchez, and I am presenting my final research proposal for Psych 4428 with Dr. Jen Lotto. The title of this research proposal is Perception and Productivity of Direct Hires under Management Hired Internally versus Recruiting External. The idea for this proposal came about early in the semester when we talked about hiring people from outside of the company. And I thought, I wonder how the employees react to that. I wonder if they would react more favorably if they knew that their leader came from within their own ranks and somebody that they sort of trusted or already knew, if that would have an impact on their productivity. And I wondered what their perception was. Like, what does it change their commitment to the organization? So that's where this all came from. The idea is based around the fact that, leadership has a big impact on the environment that they're around. A leader can make or break whether or not an employee wants to go to work. And a leader and the way that they do things can in fact impact the environment that they're in. It can be walking on eggshells, or it could be a thing where you want to come to work or you want to make that person proud. So leadership has a huge influence on employees and it, the environment of the whole place that they're in. So the ideas in this proposal are around you know observing the effects that management can have on their employees, and whether those effects differ from having an internal or an external manager. And seeing how the two different groups compare when it comes to their perceptions and different things like that, and their productivity. So the objectives are to assess employee perceptions of leadership, which is trust, satisfaction, and organizational commitment. And the second objective is to measure their productivity under the two different types of leadership. The main research question is, how do employees' perceptions and productivity differ when they work under a manager hired internally compared to a manager hired externally? The literature basically was about employee employer search, and when they go to hire a new manager, the reasoning behind they do it. Most of the research said that it's all based around money. And to me, that leaves a large gap, and it's incomplete because they could be potentially they're saving money in the beginning, but if their hiring practices have an effect on employees and the way they and their production and their output, then in the end they're wasting themselves money and they're not doing themselves any good. So the research also shows differences with internal versus external managers, where external managers have a lot more obstacles they have to face. They have to gain employee trust, they have to get to know the culture of the organization, and they have to ingrain themselves, and that takes longer, which could have an impact on productivity right away. For internal hires, they transition smoother, and the transactions and everything are usually smoother. This is according to the literature. But again, the research we found isn't directly measuring how the effects of an external manager versus an internal manager, and the different ways that it can affect employees and their productivity. There are two hypotheses for this research proposal. First is that employees who work under internally hired managers are going to have higher levels of trust, satisfaction, and organizational commitment. The second hypothesis is that employees working under internal managers will also have higher productivity compared to the other group working under an external manager. For the research design, I think the easiest thing would be to use warehouse working employees, which the reason I chose this is because they all do the same thing. If you go to like an Amazon distributing warehouse, you have a large group of people doing the exact same thing. So there won't be any variability in effort and different things like that. Everyone's doing the same job and there's a large amount. So it gives us a good sample size of people doing the same thing. So there's less variability in the types of work. So it makes it easier to, when it comes to output and it comes to productivity, everyone has the same expectations because everybody's doing the same thing. The internal versus external management, the external management will be hired from a company who does something similar, not the same company though. So an outside company, but who has still the same kind of experience doing the same thing. So the independent variable is the manager type, which is internal or external. And we have two dependent variables, which are the employee perceptions, trust, satisfaction, and organizational commitment, and the employee productivity. The procedure will start with a survey. We're going to use the PLIS, which is the Perceived Leader Integrity Scale. And this is just to get a baseline. They're going to be, this first assessment, they're going to be talking about the leadership that they are currently under because they're going to take it before they know that they're being moved to a new group. So we want to get a baseline idea. Just like with productivity, we're going to collect all that first. And then everyone will be randomly assigned. We'll do the experiment either 3 to 6 months afterwards. We will do the same exact survey, but this is going to give us an idea because everyone had the same manager from the beginning. And we're going to see the difference of how it trends either with an internal manager or an external manager and how those assessments have changed, as well as with the productivity data as well. The data analysis for the descriptive statistics will be using t-tests or ANOVA, and we're going to compare the means to determine the differences. And we're going to be using multiple regression to control for potential confounding variables. The limitations that I've found are obviously the fact that we're going to be using a warehouse distribution center. It's not generalizable. It's not going to be very easy to say, oh, that this is generalizable across different kinds of organizations, but I feel like it's fair to do since this is the first research. This is the first one. We're doing basically like a pilot. So initially it'll give us, it's about getting enough data, a big enough sample size. I think that the trade-off is good. The possibilities for, possible future implications, it adds to the data. There's not enough literature that goes into discussing things about internal versus external managers and their effect on future employee outputs. There are more factors to consider than money at the beginning, because in the end, it's going to help the organizations to know, listen, maybe it's better to hire from outside because the ends is what we're looking at. We're looking at future productivity. We're looking at the things that it affects in the future, and it's important to know now. We as IO psychologists need to do the research that's not out there and fill these gaps. And in the end, it's going to help for better leadership strategy, leadership hiring strategies, and it's going to be better for the entire IO field of research. I've included my references, and I thank you for your time. Have a great day.